the longer this war goes on, it seems like Netanyahu is growing weaker in the eyes of the Israeli public, at least according to polls. Do you think he's going to continue to get weaker and weaker?
I don't want to comment on domestic Israeli politics, and certainly I won't attack the prime minister on foreign press. We're all focused on winning the war.
I want to ask you about Israeli strikes on Gaza, because ultimately this pause in hostilities is going to end, and Israel is going to continue to try to destroy Hamas. One thing I continue to hear from Israeli supporters in the U.S. government, whether it's the Biden administration or Congress, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, I keep hearing that the IDF needs to be much more careful when it comes to Palestinian civilians in Gaza, that the IDF needs to use more precision munitions, that the IDF needs to take fewer risks. Even if the conservative estimates are right, with 15,000 killed, even if 5,000 of them are Hamas, that's still a 2-to-1 ratio of civilians to Hamas. That's a lot of civilians who have been killed. Is Netanyahu going to continue to ignore President Biden on this issue of civilian casualties?
Well, Jake, we're not magicians. There's no magic way to dramatically reduce collateral damage when Hamas's deliberate goal, intentional goal, is to increase Gaza casualties in order for you to ask me that precise question. You see, Hamas wants to stop the war in a cynical way by it effectively killing its own people by placing them in harm's way. If there were some magical solution where we could tweezer people out and just hit the rocket launcher that's shooting rockets at Israelis, we would do it. We do try to reduce unnecessary civilian casualties, but the reality is that there's no magic. The current ratio is lower than what it was at the beginning, and low in international standards from World War II through Iraq and Afghanistan. You'll see that Israel has one of the lowest ratios.
What do you think is going to happen in Gaza after the war is over? What will Gaza look like? And who is going to take over? Who is going to keep order?
Well, I'll tell you what I think we ought to do. The first thing is to fully disarm Gaza and ensure that there's no more arms, no more explosives there after we dismantle and eliminate Hamas. I mean, the first thing is to kill the Hamas leadership and the terrorists, then clean up Gaza from weapons and explosives so something like this can never happen again. The third thing I would do is create a buffer zone into Gaza of about 1.5 kilometers deep, which would become a no man's land between Gaza and Israel, again, so this sort of thing could not happen. And Israel would retain overall security and defense responsibility, but we don't want to govern the Gazans. So what I think we would do is create an interim technocratic self-government that would, say, for about 5 years, govern Gaza, denazify Gaza, which means clean out all the incitement, all the education that all Jews are pigs and devils. And after 5 years, we would revisit and figure out how to create a sustainable government, perhaps with our Abraham Accord partners, countries in that area.
Well, what do you mean by denazi? I mean, no free speech? People can't say nasty things about Jews? Get rid of them? How?
No, free speech doesn't allow for educating and poisoning the minds and hearts of
okay, so you mean like in the education? You mean in the education system?
Yes,
get rid of that.
The education system and the media. We cannot. Here's what we learned. One of the lessons learned is that when people are incited with propaganda from the moment they're born till they're 20 years old that all Jews are pigs and devils and need to be slaughtered, well, they go out and slaughter Jews. And if it's something that we used to sort of procrastinate on or not take care of, we can't ignore it anymore.
But don't you think the last 6 weeks have done a lot to incite and inspire a whole new generation of terrorists? I mean, all the civilian deaths. I mean, don't you worry that that in itself is going to raise and inspire a whole new generation of Palestinians who hate Israelis?
It depends what we do next. I want to remind you that in Nazi Germany, in the final months of the war, there were many civilian casualties, yet Germany was denazified in the war, and we had in Germany. So obviously, as I said, we don't have a goal of killing civilians. We have a goal of reducing the number of dead civilians. But look, if anyone has a magic plan how to eradicate Hamas without any collateral damage, bring it on and we'll adopt it. Barring that, we're going to have to get the job done and then denazify Gaza.
Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jake.